Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, in the year 2025, we are looking back and we are saying, how have humans been caretaking humans? How have humans been caretaking animals? How have animals been able to exist in the world? And what's really going on? What truly is the essence of all of the animals in the world, about their protection, their safety, their security, their abuse, their misuse, and really their downright being able to use them as almost as property, as as money. We will pawn them and we will share them. Are we truly taking the animal kingdom and using it as something, as a vehicle for our own human story, for our human safety, security, power, our own diversity, our own nourishment, and really using it as a control factor? The humans and the animals have been in this control thing for eons. Push and pull, survival, security, value, domination, a subservient. It has been this way forever. Is it going to stop? Is it going to change? Is it going to transform? Or is it going to shapeshift? And who is that up to? Today, my guest is Kimberly Moore. The book is A Case for the Legal Protection of Animals: Humanity's Shared Destiny with the Animal Kingdom. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
So glad to have you, because I think, I see it playing out on social media every single day about animals. Oh, we shouldn't eat them. Others are saying that's all we have to eat. Now look at how human I am. Others are saying, oh, well, I have a pet. Still others are saying, oh, well, I'm going on this trip and we're still going to hunt. Isn't it such a diverse conversation when you even bring up the word animal?
It really is. I mean, animals seem to be on the agenda almost in every aspect of life, whether it's food, entertainment, our own vacations. They always come front and center in terms of their importance and how we're treating them.
Yeah. We look at nature and, the trees, even the trees are having these issues. We think about deforestation. We think about lumber. We think about paper, people were doing paper all the time, and now people aren't doing paper anymore, so trees are more, or we're taking them down for houses. We think of nature as something that we can control for our own power and pleasure.
We can certainly control nature. We do so, however, many times at our own demise. It is clear based on how laws developing around the world that how we treat animals has profound implications for our own wellness and health. And as you say, deforestation is having catastrophic consequences for biodiversity, species extinctions, and et cetera. So profound impact.
It's like, I almost look at it as humans are always going to have the superiority. We even see it within the humans. If you have more of education, you're more superior, the whole idea. It's kind of a tower kind of idea that we believe in. And people say, well, animals can't think, animals can't do, we have to do for them. Is that or is that not true within the entire animal community? Or do they, too, have their tier system just as us, it's just in a different way?
Absolutely. And you're spot on in terms of how we view animals and our own superiority. I mean, we view them as so inferior that our legal systems all treat them as mere property for legal purposes. They're not even recognized as living, breathing creations.
Right.
They're just treated as commodities and really for our own use and exploitation in any manner whatsoever.
Yeah, it's all about this little silly brain on top of our head. We believe that it has, so much more superiority because it can speak out. Don't you think that perhaps we just don't know the language of the animal kingdom?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the fields of animal cognition and intelligence and communication, the fields are just really expanding exponentially. We're learning so much more about the animal kingdom, and in doing so, we're finding that we are pretty much very similar in terms of many animals who have their own needs and desires, their desire to protect their family, to provide food and shelter. We actually can see a lot more in common with the animal kingdom than we're actually willing to admit.
Right. I really have this thing. It has been this way my entire existence about, eating animals or even sometimes people say be a vegetarian and I'm like, well, I grew the absolutely beautiful broccoli. I just couldn't possibly, and these things always filter through in my thoughts. And I think that when people do not filter them through their thoughts, they're becoming very distinctly separate from them. And we're not saying that you have to totally shut down and not engage in a human process. What we're saying is be aware. Isn't that truly what we're all talking about today is about awareness?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, our own individual actions have profound consequences, not only for the animal kingdom, but also for the planet. So when we look at deforestation, which is driven by animal agriculture, when we look at factory farms, which is driving environmental degradation, I mean, our own actions, even in terms of the foods that we choose to eat, have profound consequences for the entire planet and, in turn, adverse impacts for people around the globe.
Let's talk about the sentence you have in your book. The public is increasingly demanding certain freedoms for animals. And I would stop right there, and I wrote on the top of the page, human fears is the control factor. If I own a meatpacking plant, there's no way you're going to talk to me about it. If that's what feeds my family and gets my kids on to school and I take care of everybody that needs to be, or if I turn around and this is what I need to do to be able to keep my life going, such as a circus, or if I have a petting farm, or if I have an animal breeding, whatever it might be, we look at it and we say, isn't that the concept that human fears is what's the controlling factor over this entire dogma?
You're absolutely spot on. I mean, when we look at how animals are treated, it really requires that we look inward in terms of how our behavior can be modified and how it will impact us. So as you know, religion, tradition, culture, all these things work for status quo. So, when we talk about changing our behavior in terms of clothes we wear, food we eat, it really does require a significant level of introspection. How are we going to modify our behavior to improve the lives of animals?
Mm-hmm. But we think about it, and you wrote in the book, you said, what rights do they want, the animals? And I think back on that, and I wrote on the bottom, they want protection from humans. And truly, when we look at it, we say, what are rights for animals, and are we using our human lacking, I didn't get care for when I was a child, so now I'm going to care for the pets, or I didn't get enough to eat, so now I'm going to provide food. So if all of these dichotomies of what we believe our rights are, or what we deserve, or what the government should give us, or whatever it might be the story, you could stick anything in there. It truly is about being protected from animals. So we say, what do we even know what the animals really want? And why are we out there fighting for that? Are we fighting for our own preservation? Or are we fighting for the preservation that our story is going to be reflected in the animal's existence?
And absolutely, the rights of animals are going to be different from the rights of humans. And so they're going to be more interested in the right to freedom, the right to bodily integrity, the right to live their lives as nature intended. And it's interesting that when you think about how much we impact the lives of animals. Animals now come out at night instead of during the day so that they can essentially just avoid interaction with humans.
Right.
And the one place on the planet where animals are flourishing, and this is profound, Chernobyl, which was a nuclear disaster decades ago, because humans are not in that area, wildlife and animals are flourishing. It's almost like taking humans out of the equation, animals can live their own natural and best lives. But that's pretty sad that it takes us going to an area where humans can no longer go. Animals are flourishing.
Yeah. And if you look at it, isn't that what humans are fighting for now, too? Is to be able to be free? Aren't we all fighting for the same things in our existence?
We absolutely are. And in fact, the heart of my book was driven by the reality that our destinies are shared dramatically with the animal kingdom. So we all want food, we all want shelter, we all want healthy environments. All these things are tied in together. There's really no separating our wellness from the wellness of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, it's all about being able to be seen, cared for, and loved, period. Those three things, It's when all of this other stuff gets in the way that we get so... and I think also, too, it's the idea of lack of power. When we feel that something outside of us has taken away our power and is controlling us, that we now feel defeated and can no longer exist. And I always think of that in the animal community. When animals start to not feel well, they move from their normal habitat, things just don't seem to be right. It's when they have lack of power because others are trying to put power over them and control their existence. Perhaps?
Yes. Yeah, and change is actually is scary. It's difficult for humans. Humans are slow to evolve and to adapt. I mean, we like status quo. We don't like having to change our behaviors or even our thinking. But when it comes to the animal kingdom, it really is critical. Our well-being is absolutely tied to the well-being of the animal kingdom. There's no separating the two.
Mm-hmm. I live here in New Orleans, and I can distinctly remember after Katrina, wow, the animals, it was just so uniquely different. They migrated, many were dead. Things came out of buildings, like a lot of those clinical trial animals, all came out and were released, and we don't know where or what they happened to them. And every time a hurricane comes down here, the animals shift around. There's this highway that goes from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, I-10, and it always used to have, in the 70s and 80s, I distinctly remember all kinds of animals on the highway all the time. It was roadkill every night, There were raccoons, armadillos, snakes, deer, a bear here or there. Now it's pretty pristine. I never see anything there. And I'm going, this is the strangest thing I have ever seen. Even the pelicans, we don't see them anymore. And we think about it, what is changing? Are we changing in the way in which we allow their habitat to permeate and support them? Or is the climate, in fact, changing and we are all, animals and humans, just reacting to it?
Well, certainly with species, we are looking at 1 million species being at the extinction risk through human actions. And so we're seeing, wildlife trafficking, extreme weather events. They're all just providing so much pressure on species and their ability really even to survive. And the scientists are saying that we're now entering into the 6th mass extinction, which is going to result in even more species being lost. I mean, even in, Tanzania, poaching of animals led to a reduction of population by 70% in just 6 years. And so animals are under tremendous assault. They're facing the same catastrophes that we face, like with the hurricanes in Louisiana. And I think about Louisiana when the hurricane came through. So many people never left their homes because they didn't want to leave their pets.
We didn't leave,
a lot of people perished. I mean, it took that type of situation we now have a law that requires shelters to provide room for companion animals because, we just realized people are not going to leave their animals. They're going to stay at home, putting both the animals and the humans at risk.
But it's also, too, about the perception, because even though there might be a law, hotels still don't take the animals. And also, too, the shelters, they take them only if you have a cage, only if this, only if that, and there's a list of restrictions. And then if you happen to be, as we were in Katrina, we finally got to a shelter, they said that if you're here more than 2 or 3 days, your animals are going to be shipped away. And let's hope maybe you can get them another time, but you don't. So
that's terrible. That's just terrible.
And that does still happen to today. We can even see, as in North Carolina, the animals were all shipped out. And I think when we think about that, we think about what is the value of an animal. But also, too, we think about it, do we even give value to the humans? So, in other words, if a human is the one who's controlling the value of an animal, and they don't even consider a value of another human next to them, perhaps those are the ones that are making our laws, making things going on in the world. Those are the ones out there that were creating the dogma, the stories, and the beliefs and the truths, perhaps.
And certainly passing laws is just really the first step. I mean, as you say, there are the devil's in the details. There are a lot of administrative issues that have to be put into place, policies and procedures for situations when there's like an extreme weather event. But there's also enforcement issues. So as you say, even though a law was passed to protect both animals and humans, not everyone follows the law. And frankly, when it comes to animals, enforcement is poor. I mean, there's no getting around it. The humans are always prioritized in terms of enforcing the laws. Animals are always, put down on the scale of importance. So it's not just the laws, it's the enforcement and also getting in place policies and procedures to protect both people and animals.
You also talked in your book about the medical student who said she didn't want to give the lethal injection to an animal. And I think about that today. It says alternatives to future students with similar objections. Well, the people have jobs that do this. This is their job to be able to go out and do clinical trials. We see this all the time. There's not a clinical trial that I read day in and day out that does not start with rats or animals or the names or the mice or whatever animal species it might be. Just because we believe that there's one with a smaller brain and know it's not going to hurt them and their lifespan is shorter, we believe that they're just as less of a value than something that might be around a little bit longer, and we can actually put our hand on it and feel it and see it, and we wouldn't want to do that to that animal, right?
And also, it's not just the rats and the smaller species. It's also dogs and cats that are in research labs all around the country. And the sad part is that animal testing is notoriously unreliable. There is little to no value, even after decades of testing. In fact, the FDA reports a 92% failure rate. And it's not just that the medications are not working with animal testing. They can also be very dangerous. People have actually been injured and have died. And part of that is what drove the FDA Modernization Act of 2.0. That was intended to reduce the amount of animal testing just because it's not reliable. So that just drops the animal testing as a condition to human trials. It doesn't mandate it, but it allows companies to just skip the animal testing because it's just ultimately not reliable.
Right. But then people will also argue the point, if there's no barrier between the product in its new, unique development and myself, why should I now become the clinical trial?
Well, the good news is there are alternatives coming on board, including sophisticated computer models that show tissue and cells, how they react to medications. I mean, public pressure really is driving thousands of companies already to stop animal research and testing. It's just the laws need to catch up. This is part of when I say the public is very against testing animals and the poor treatment of animals. And as a result of that, the private sector is driving changes. Thousands of companies are no longer testing on animals as a part of their review of their products. Kellogg's, Volkswagen, Dove, CoverGirl. I mean, there's just endless companies that have just stopped. And the laws just really need to catch up with the reality.
But yet we still know that monkeys are still being used quite frequently. And, as we saw in North Carolina, till today they're still being used. Here in Louisiana, I can tell you, constantly being used. And when you go by a warehouse that has a very obscure kind of name with 2 or 3 letters on it, you can be guaranteed something funky might be going on behind those doors.
The U.S. is the only country other than Carbon that still has chimpanzees in biomedical research facilities. Mm-hmm. There were some 68,000 chimps in research in 2019, and then they have these laboratory breeding colonies where there's tens of thousands of more animals. Mm-hmm. Other countries aren't doing this. Other countries are moving forward with more sophisticated technology. Right. And they don't need it. They're using cell-based in vitro tests, computer models, organ-on-chip technology. All of those outperform animal models all the time.
But isn't that also, too, other countries have cleaner food, they have cleaner lives for the humans and animals, they respect life, and they're saying, no, we are not going to do any of these negative concepts. We're just not accepting them. It's pretty much in the U.S. and a few other countries that are accepting these policies, just as you talk in your book about animals raised for food. Well, I don't think that they do in the U.S. what they do in Europe, correct?
You're absolutely right, and that's why I wrote the book, because the United States really is lagging behind its major trading partners. Mm-hmm. I think 150 countries have already written into their law the human right to a clean environment. Food additives and things that they create the food in the United States, you don't see that in Europe. There's much more of a pro-health, the concept of health, human health and animal health, and health of the environment, the sort of oneness of all three of those together really are front and center in many countries around the world. And the U.S. is lagging behind its major trading partners in this regard.
Because it's also very important to note the fact that while we're truly talking about animals, their rights and their preservation and their health and taking care of them in your book, we're also talking about, humans are the biggest polluters of the ground, of the earth, of the water. I live in New Orleans, as I said. Our drinking water here comes down the Mississippi. Now, do you think that our water is screened for everything that is not good? No. I mean, it would pretty much you would have to take the filter and you would have to bury it, I don't know where, because it would be like a nuclear bomb, so to speak. It would have so much toxins that it would be catching and everything. So in essence, humans are creating this paradigm circle of, we might care about them. Then they go out and they pollute the earth and their water, and then it turns around and it pollutes the animals in their own existence. We've created a very vicious cycle of life, perhaps?
We absolutely have. I mean, U.S. waterways are extremely polluted. Nitrogen and phosphorus pollution from animal manure is in many of the waterways in the United States. And it's incredible to think that there's over 12,000 deaths in the United States each year from air pollution from animal agriculture. So when you think of those poor communities in North Carolina that are right up next to those hog farms, it's absolutely it's heart-wrenching. I mean, the health implications of being poor and living in that area, it's just heartbreaking.
Here again, after the hurricanes, and they said, it was terrible that all of the animals died. And they believed that the animals died from the hurricane. The animals died because all the chemical plants were able then to, under a state of emergency, you're able to release whatever and not be fined or caught. So what do you think everybody did? They opened their valves, and everybody just dumped. Because, that's how you make money or are fined by the government, by what you put out each month. Well, everybody dumped. Everybody dumped all the way down the river, and that's what they did. And that's what killed all of the animals, And when we think about it, can we see or be open to the possibility that there are other reasons and other solutions out there, that we need to listen to these conversations just you and I are having today, and these propositions of possibilities. Maybe we didn't look here. Maybe we didn't look there. Perhaps some government or some financial institution or some big company or somebody with great powerful or political or monetary system is hiding something. Can we now be open to that?
I mean, we really are finding ourselves in this sort of circle of destruction, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, climate change alone is an existential threat. The extreme weather events, the wildfires, all the flooding you see around the globe, that in of itself is a threat to both people and animals. You add in deforestation, you add in the environmental degradation like you were talking about, all the toxic, pollutants going into the air and water. Mm-hmm. That is driving biodiversity loss. And then we sort of find ourselves suffering as the human species because now we no longer have the food, the water, the clean air purification, the disease pest control, clean soil to grow food. And we're just in this vicious circle. And it's just because we are not respecting the animal kingdom and their habitats.
I mean, you look here, the cyanide plant, and then they're going to be putting up a new lithium plant, the only one in the country. And we go, okay, we got it, And we wonder why we keep trying to have an existence. And then we say, I would like the animals to live like I live. So what is the quality of the standard of life that we're trying to bring ourselves up to, but also to bring up the animals? In other words, if we believe that, hey, it's okay, everybody's got a drought, no big deal, we don't need to give the animals water because we don't have any water either. In other words, what is the quality of life that you'd like to see in the animal kingdom, and how can we define that?
Absolutely, protection of habitats. I mean, the species extinction is being driven by deforestation and loss of habitats. This is so important that other countries are actually donating massive amounts of land to create national parks and protected areas. Norway, Turkey, Ghana, China, they are all absolutely, they are all creating protective areas because they understand that we need these vital ecosystems. We need this for insects. I mean, my goodness, there's an insect apocalypse now because of all the pesticides we're putting in our yard and our grass.
Right.
And that all has cascading impacts to other species, all the way up the food chain to humans. So, I mean, we really need more environmental protection. We need to halt deforestation. The only thing that's going to halt deforestation is to get rid of beef production. I mean, that is the number one driver of deforestation. And we need to put into place laws that protect animals as individuals, not just species, but as individuals and their habitats. I mean, unless we do that, we're facing existential threats.
We turn around and we look at it. They tore down all the trees in Vegas because they were having a race. And the temperature off that pavement has now increased exponentially in the summer. Here in New Orleans, after the storms, a lot of the trees, go down. But now in the city, they said, we're going to tear all these trees down because we want it to look pretty for blah, blah, blah. And we see this quite often. And we go, all of these big, beautiful, magnificent oaks, we have 90% less than we ever had here. And our temperature it's almost getting unbearable in the summer anymore.
And it's probably going to get worse, too. 2020 was the hottest year on record ever.
Yeah.
2022, the CO2 levels were at a level not seen in millions of years. And July 2023 was the hottest month on record.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about theoretical risk that we may find, in decades or centuries. It's front and center right now.
Yeah, because even so, you have to think about the little animals, too. We think about seafood here that everybody eats. They're saying you don't need to boil your seafood anymore. Just go catch it and eat it because the water is so hot. It was so intensely hot here. So that's really driving a lot of animals to different areas, too, if they don't all kill them out already. Don't you think?
I mean, honestly, we could have an entire conversation about our treatment of aquatic animals in the oceans. They face multiple threats. overfishing. They face pollution. Marine plastic pollution is now entering into human bodies, the brain, and other parts because we're consuming aquatic animals that have been feeding on these microplastics that are throughout every single ocean in the world. When you think about the statistics, 90% of the larger ocean predators have disappeared due to fishing, overfishing, pollution. It really is as if we have declared a war on our oceans. And I think about in 2021, the Navy dropped a 40,000-pound bomb in the Atlantic. It was so violent that it triggered a 3.9 magnitude earthquake. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, millions of people depend on seafood to survive, and the oceans are just being systematically destroyed. It's really heartbreaking.
I also, too, think about, all the fishermen, all the trawlers and stuff here, because many restaurants here have been caught already. They're getting all of the cheaper shrimp from China. They're just losing all of these other trawlers because, they just can't compete with the cheaper prices. And I think about it again, are we back to the political and the money story again? Well,
money drives everything. I mean, if you think about these billion-dollar industries around the world, every industry is making profits on the backs of animals and their habitats, and that includes fishing. I mean, overfishing is going to result in even more starvation around the world. Deforestation is going to result in water scarcity, even more so than it is now. The industries are profit motivated. We get that. Their primary purpose is to make money, but we desperately need regulations to protect habitats, including the ocean and the animals in the ocean.
Is it just because we can't see the animals in the ocean, do you think? In other words, people think, I just see it on my vacation, on these pictures and stuff, but you don't see them, so you don't think about them or you don't care about them?
Yeah. It's so sad because fish are the least like us in terms of the animal kingdom, but we're finding out that they're highly intelligent, highly sentient. They feel pain. They actually, suffocate when we pull them out of the water. And they probably have the least protection of any animals on the planet. And I think it's, as you say, it's because we can't see them, we don't identify with them.
Yeah, but you sure can. How many people do you know that are taking their omega-3s, okay? You could all turn around and say, where did that come from? That came from the ocean. That came from the fish. Everybody's turning around and grabbing them out for supplements. So there again is the money tool again, and they're being used again as a tool by which to be able to fuel the human society,
Of course. I mean, it used to be that you could eat seafood as long as you didn't, purchase your seafood from these, artificial tanks where animals are just thrown in there.
Right.
But nowadays, it's actually not even safe to eat animals from the ocean. The quality of seafood has just dropped dramatically. And as I said, we are consuming microplastics, and we still do not even know what the implications of that is going to be.
In your book, the link between human rights and animal rights is a chapter. And the first sentence, it says, humanity has a long history of oppression. That's linking us right back to the beginning of our conversation. It's truly all about seeing what we are actually doing to ourselves and turning around and doing that which we despise, we want to control, we want to oppress, we want to abuse, we want to whatever it will be, and do that on the animal community. However, we also, on the other flip side, will say, I want to have a pet because the pet is going to do this, that, or other for me again. So it's all about appeasing the human in the whole cycle.
It really is. I mean, when it comes to animals, we are very focused on ourselves. We are a very selfish species, very selfish species. But the good news is that is starting to change. Laws around the globe are starting to recognize the importance of caring for animals and recognizing their rights. I mean, in Italy, you can't even put a lobster on ice anymore because it causes undue suffering and harm.
Right.
So there is absolutely an awakening that's happening in terms of animals do suffer. They're not like us. And the way we treat animals has direct consequences for our own well-being. That's the good news.
Well, is this really a global fight, or is it just a U.S., kind of, I wouldn't even say it's a fight because I think it's more like talk to the hand kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe it has been that in decades, and is that what needs to change?
Well, it really is a global movement. 20 to 30 years ago, you would never hear most people talk about an animal being sentient, and it just wasn't in our vocabulary. But as I meet other attorneys around the world, animal law is growing. It's one of the fastest growing areas of law there is. Mm-hmm. And even 20 or 30 years ago, we didn't have animal law classes in the United States in law schools. We now have law programs in every major law school in the country, including Harvard and Michigan. It is absolutely a worldwide movement, and unfortunately, the United States is lagging behind in terms of making changes. Most of the changes in the United States are at the local and the state level. You probably saw that California banned the sale of animal fur.
Right.
We see progressive measures around the country, but not at the federal level. The federal level has a law on the books that is so antiquated, it doesn't protect over 95% of the animals raised for food. It excludes chickens. They have no rights in terms of a humane slaughter. There's no protection of animals in factory farms. It's abysmal at the federal level, absolutely abysmal. So, but we see changes at the state and local level that give us hope, and hopefully we will catch up with what our major trading partners are doing in terms of protecting animals.
You know, it's interesting. I look at the clothing industry, and they have faux fur, faux wool, whatever. And, you know, you want to question, what are they using? And they're using recycled materials, and the recycled materials are plastics. So now we're putting recycled plastics on our being, in essence. That's not really going around the good chain. That's kind of, you know, in other words, what they're doing is they're bartering. I'll give you one bad apple, you give me two.
Well, that is actually what the fur industry tries to tell consumers, and it's really misinformation, and it's deceptive. There are plastic-based fur alternatives, but it's not like those plastic coats are being thrown in the ocean. That is not what is driving the problem, the crisis with microplastics in the ocean. It is far better from an environmental perspective to use faux fur than it is to use animal fur. And this is not just me saying it. This is the fur industry itself came out with a report a few years ago, and they said it's far better to have these sort of synthetic alternatives to fur than it is to have fur farms where the manure is just absolutely destroying local waterways and the environment. Right. But there are new alternatives coming on board. Mushroom fibers is one of my favorites. Pineapple leaves, cork. There's all sorts of alternatives to using animal fur, which is horrible for the environment. Not to mention that, you know, these animals in the wild, they cover vast miles in the wild, and you put those animals into a tiny little cage, and they literally lose their minds. They pace back and forth. They gnaw their arms off. It's really horrific in terms of how animals are treated on fur farms.
Do you think perhaps humans need to learn about less consumption? If we learn about less consumption, there'll be less driving factors to be able to push the envelope. Well, you know, you always think about it. You know, in physics, I mean, how much do you have that driving force behind it? If the driving force will just alleviate itself, things will start to come to a point of harmonious balance.
100%. Humane education is the key to changing the world for animals. I mean, we're learning how environmentally destructive fur is. I mean, just that information alone, we've seen more than 24 countries ban fur farming straight out. Israel even banned the sale of fur. And in the United States, you know, California banned the sale of fur, but there's also localities in Massachusetts, Florida, Colorado, and Michigan that has also banned the sale of fur because they know how environmentally destructive it is and how cruel it is. But absolutely, humane education is the key to new progressive laws and reforms. People don't realize, but how we treat animals is actually a national security issue. And people think, well, you treat animals, it's nice, we feel good about it. It actually is much more profound than that. You know that today, there are more countries at war and in conflict than there has been since World War II. And humans humans have fought and battled over resources for centuries, but there really is a declining number of resources from climate change. And we know water scarcity and wars, they're all driven by not having resources, even water.
Right.
The UN Secretary General Boutros-Ghali said the next Middle East war will be over water, not politics. Changing climate destabilizes communities. It causes disease, water, food scarcity. How we treat animals in their habitats drives resources, that drives us not having the resources that we need as a species.
Just as well as if you took away the resources for the animals to be able to thrive and they would perish, you take away animals and people will come out of the woodwork trying to find food. So it's truly about being able to say, how can we evolve very quickly in some aspects of the way in which we're engaging in the world before we get off this tipping point? Because once we get off that tipping point that we're on right now, we're going to fall either way. And we could fall the wrong way, and there's a potential to go the right way, but we are on that tipping point, yes?
We're absolutely on the tipping point. I mean, right now, world hunger is just getting more devastating. We're actually not seeing improvements in the numbers in terms of world starvation and water scarcity. It's just getting worse. It's being driven by climate change, the dry soil, not being able to generate food. And that's driving, migration is a huge issue around the globe right now. It became front and center in this year's presidential election. It's all being driven by people who are looking for food and water and a safe place to live.
Right.
And less and less of the planet is becoming actually, a livable, sustainable area.
Yeah. We have plummeted, we have come, and we have destroyed, And I think now we're reaping the outcome of that, don't you think?
There is clear, consistent, and an undeniable link between animal cruelty and violence against people. So if we improve laws for no other reason, it's really for our own well-being. There's study after study after study that links human abuse with violence against people. We see it time and time again. Even in our slaughterhouses, the Human Rights Watch has said that the U.S. has failed to meet its obligations under international human rights standards due to the conditions in slaughterhouses. Violence begets violence every single time.
Absolutely. Because you just can't do those kinds of jobs. It is what it is. Kimberly, I'd love having you discuss this topic today. Could you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
So again, my name is Kimberly Moore. I'm an attorney at Palgrave, Washington, D.C., and I'm the author of the book, The Case for the Legal Protection of Animals, Humanity's Shared Destiny with the Animal Kingdom. This book is part of the Animal Ethics series that is published by Palgrave Macmillan, and it will be taught in law schools and universities worldwide.
Very awesome. Kimberly, I really think that it's time that we have to wake up. And I know for myself, I share with my grandkids all the time. They'll say, well, why is that butterfly there? Why is this lizard here? And it's truly up to us to be able to step out of our old story and say, I don't know, or let's check it out and let's figure out a way to be able to make things better. So it's really up to us. So we thank you so much for engaging in this conversation today with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. If you'd like to find out more information about Kimberly Moore, the case for the legal protection of animals, humanity's shared destiny, and the animal kingdom, please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to the website for more information. And it is up to us. We are on the tipping point. It's time to stand up and be able to say something doesn't feel right, and I'd like to know more. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanette.com. JeanetteGallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.